Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Brewer. I'm the training manager for the National Indian Gaming Commission. With me today, I have the executive director of the Nisqually Tribal Gaming Agency, Bill Goforth. And today's presentation is going to be on promotions fraud, a case study. Before we get into that, just a couple of side notes. First, thank you for taking time out of your day today to join us. A couple announcements for people that aren't aware. We're doing a national training topic of the month. We're calling it the NTTM. And just want to let you know that next month we're going to be doing a training on digital wallets. And I believe that's scheduled for February 4th. So if you go to our website, you'll see the registration page for that. But you can expect, every month that we'll be doing some form of training events. Additionally, we're doing a 2-day internal audit boot camp, which is going to be in March. So keep going to our website, follow us on social media, and you will get all that information from us. That's about all I have, other than a joke. And I'm trying to remember a good one. Did you all hear about the new broom? It's sweeping the nation. It's a little tough when I can't see people's reactions. I'm really hoping you're laughing really hard right now because that's a really bad joke. All right, well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Again, I kind of briefly introduced Bill. Bill, why don't you say a few words and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bill Goforth. I'm the executive director here at Nisqually Tribe for the Gaming Agency and the Gaming Commission. I started back in 1998 in surveillance and worked my way up in 2012 as the executive director. And we're really fortunate to have a great gaming commission here that when Steve asked, we were able to share this case with you guys. So I'm happy to be here to talk about it.
And I have to say, I really, really like your background. I believe that is Mount St. Helens. Is that correct, or is that Mount
Oh,
Rainier?
Mount St. Helens blew up. This is Mount Rainier.
Okay, maybe pre-80 Mount St. Helens. I don't
Mount
know.
St. Helens is about 5 right now.
That's true. That's true.
The height of Mount St. Helens right now, but it's coming back slowly. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
Well, like Bill said, this is a case study on a promotions fraud, and just to kind of set it up, we're just going to move right into this, and we're gonna ask Bill. Bill, explain to us what exactly happened here.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I think it was back in 2018, we had a pit manager that took advantage of our system and started out helping his brother. His brother had a gambling problem and got in trouble with some gang members of loan sharking. And so he decided to help his brother by adding points to his club card. Most casinos have some sort of reward program. So he did this by putting in false ratings for his brother so that he could cash out his points, which we do have at our casino, um, so that he could pay off his gambling debt. And then it kind of snowballed. They got another friend involved, and then they ended up getting up to I think 11 accounts that they were doing false ratings and then coming in and cashing out those points. So yeah, it was a pretty big case for us because of the length of time that they were getting away with it.
Right, and the total amount that you guys determined that was taken was like 830,000 or
Yeah, it was a little
close to
bit
that.
under that, but yeah, it was pretty. And majority of it was within the last year of the scam. Like most incidents that people probably see is that it kind of keeps getting higher and higher. They get greedier and greedier, and within I think the last year, it was right around 500,000 that they were, just in 1 year that they added up.
Wow. And then just to clarify, so just so everybody understands, this is not your typical promotional player card where you're earning points for dining and stuff like that. You guys were actually doing cash back on wagering, correct?
Yeah, so when you come in and you play, whether it's a slot machine or table games, it rates your play, which is your average bet versus the time that you play, and then it gives you a discount back in comp points. And with technology it is today, you can go up to a slot machine, put in your membership card, and download those points into cash. Whether you play it at the machine or just hit the cash out button as a slot ticket, and then go cash that out.
Okay, well, so what we're going to do now is we're going to show you a succession of 3 videos. These are surveillance videos. And in a nutshell, this is the entire scam as in its entirety. Well, with the exception of the shift manager, the pit manager, going back into the office and verifying the accounts. But so without further ado, as we kind of go through the videos, we'll talk about it, and I'll be doing some circling as to what you should be looking at. So here's the first video. And Bill, if you want to just kind of talk about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, if you look at the time up above, this is about 2 in the morning, and they're closing down the tables, and the pit person's helping close down the tables, and the pit manager there that you see that's highlighted is going to a tablet for ratings, and in this short amount of time, he just punched in about 11 accounts of open ratings.
So what he was doing was he was going in and he was jumping on the tablet, opening up the ratings, and then where was he going from here?
So he goes back to the office where, as a pit manager, he's in a position to approve those ratings that are open and close them out. Well, he also had the ability to edit those. So then, he just has to open them up in the pit, and then when he goes back to the office, he will manipulate those accounts for false ratings, and you'll see some of the false ratings later on in the presentation.
Right, and so did this, looking back on it now, other than the fact that it was 1:50 in the morning, was there anything that he did here that violated your controls or your policies or procedures?
Well, when the floor supervisors, they should be logging off when they're not on the table. There's a timeout setting that most operations has, and operations sets that up to what's practical for them. Whether it's 30 seconds, whether it's 15 minutes. Unfortunately, at the time of this incident, I think we had it set for like 30 minutes. It was a little high. So for um, somebody to come in, and especially a pit manager, just to start touching the screen like that, more floor supervisors you see this floor supervisor kind of turned around like, what's going on here? They might question that, but not a lot of times people are in that position to question their boss when they come in.
Right. And then I think it's important to know that the second person I circled here is the floor supervisor. And one of the interesting things is he's actually using her login, correct, to go in there and activate all those accounts. So when you're looking at your reporting system, it actually appears that the floor supervisor was the one that was, introducing the initial ratings.
Yeah, sometimes he used his own, because sometimes pit managers have to come in and cover the floor supervisor for breaks and things like that. So they may have their own login too. So
Right.
on I think some of the sheets you'll see that sometimes it's floor supervisor and sometimes it's his own.
Right. And I find it interesting that there's, I think, a total of 2 people, well, 1 person gaming and 1 person leaving. So there's 2 total people in the pit. So again, I don't know that violates any procedures, but it would seem to me like he was doing something as far away from people as he could without really being observed. So that's the first video. Oops. The second one's a little longer, so I apologize. But it really, what it does is it shows some interesting things as far as what he's able to do. And Bill, I'll go ahead and let you do the narration of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so we see this is his brother that's coming in, and he's gonna put in, I think 3 or 4 cards, and download those credits that were loaded up, and then he's gonna cash them out into a slot ticket, and you can see he'll do the typical rubbernecking, looking around, and as he pulls the slot ticket, you can see he goes underneath the machine and kind of hides it a little bit. As much as possible, but you can see he doesn't really play. He just kind of puts in the card, puts in the pin number, downloads the points, hits the cash out button, puts in an error one, we'll do it, move over to an error machine, and do the same thing. So you'll see him, kind of stick to this machine and do a couple of counts, and then move over to an error machine and do a couple more. And this was towards the end of them doing this, obviously, since we have video of it. And they are wrapping it up to around $900 per account per day.
Yeah, it's just interesting. One of the things that I like to point out in live trainings when we can have the audience participate is what don't you see here? You don't see any human interaction. He's able to just basically take the cards, put them into a player terminal, download the points with no verification from an employee. So it's kind of give and take, and this is where he goes over to the second machine. You probably all get the idea of what exactly is going on here. Really all he's doing is just downloading the cashable credits into Tito tickets, and then the next video will show what he does with those. I don't think I need to mark him. He's the only one in screen. Go ahead and talk us through it, Bill.
Yeah, so there he goes. Like I said, this was towards the end before they got caught, and it was about $900 per account. So imagine each time he puts a slot ticket in that kiosk, he's getting $900 cash back. And they keep it under that limit of most of your kiosks due to your Title 31s. There's a limit for amount of cashing out on your slot tickets. I think it's been talked about reviewing kiosk reports, and maybe this would be something that could stick out, a future reference of seeing multiple, $900 tickets cashed out in a short period of time. But the great thing is with everything being automatic is we can track the machine that he was on to the exact same kiosk where he put those vouchers in. So evidence-wise, it is kind of nice having that electronic tracking system.
So in that short video, what you saw was, shift manager opens up the points, goes in and validates or creates the fraudulent ratings. Suspect 2 has all the cards and the PIN numbers, goes in, loads up all the points, cashable credits onto his account, cashes them out, and goes to the kiosk. Again, with the exception of the shift manager, the risk for suspect 2 is a little low because he's not actually having to interact with anybody other than possibly getting caught with a bunch of cards and a bunch of tickets. So, I don't know how it is. I know we want to do more for customer service and make things as quick as possible for our customers as without putting too many barriers in there, but you also have to measure the risk of something like this. So we saw the scam. We know what happened. How did you guys figure out this was going on?
So like in most times when something like this happens, it's accidental. And so we had an error pit manager working the following day, and when they pulled up the report, for some reason, it pulled up a rating from the previous day. I don't know if it was through the queue or not, but the top players, a name came up that she didn't recognize, and so it bugged her. She looked, it didn't look right. Something didn't look right. So thankfully, she took the extra step and looked into it a little bit more and saw that the rating was for like 9 hours. And it was below their high action list. Normally, high action is at least $1,000 buy-in, and this was only like a $400 buy. And then their average bet was extremely high. So she knew it was wrong from the get-go, and she did the right thing. She notified the shift manager, which in turn said, "Hey, you need to talk to TGA." And then our agent went down there and said, "Okay, let's look at this account, and then let's look at the reports." And when they started pulling the reports, they noticed a common theme, and it was always the same pit manager that was approving these ratings. And so that started our investigation, and we ended up pulling our audit team, which you know what's great about us is we have a kiosk, or not a kiosk, a terminal for player ratings. And so they're able to pull records right from their office area. We had surveillance start on saving footage of these accounts and days. Um, and we had the investigators, play the lead role as far as what our audit team finds and what our surveillance team finds, linking it together. And luckily, too, we had operational compliance and a database person that was able to go, because after we realized that it was on for this whole year, we looked back at, well, how many years has this been going on? And we had changed systems. We went from the SDS CMP system to IGT Patriot Management System. So luckily, Casino Operations Database person was able to pull those records for those accounts. So we were able to go back and see how many accounts that was affected, um, which gave us enough information the first couple of days to see if his next day on shift, if he was going to do it or not. So we contacted the tribal police and the state gaming commission, let them know what was going on, and the tribal police brought in the FBI. FBI let us do our investigation and sat in on kind of the interviewing process. But sure enough, when the gentleman came in, and we were observing him, he actually did exactly what we just saw. And so we were able to pull him right after the incident, and it was a pretty easy confession, when you get your hand caught in the cookie jar, so to speak.
So you said you switched systems, and you had to bring in an operations employee to go back into the old system. So you guys have a good working relationship with your operations. You hear every now and then that operations, they don't trust TGA, and TGA doesn't trust operations. Kind of talk about that working dynamic.
Yeah, we have a good working relationship with our casino management and their compliance team. And, we were asking for information without giving them too much details. So that way it doesn't also put any kind of burden on them. We just said, hey, we really need to look at some player accounts. Can you help us out? And, sure, and then, hey, we need to go back into the old system and look at these player accounts. We didn't tell them to the extent why. We just said, hey, we just want to verify some things. So, and they did it, and it was a lot of work for them too, having to go back and dig through those records. So, It definitely takes a team effort when you have something this big and that many files you have to go through.
Did one of the things that I find interesting, and I know you have some more information on this, is that this went on for so long and nobody knew. Um, can you kind of? I know there's one case where somebody did know, and could you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so when you have these large fraud cases, it's usually the common theme is it's somebody that was trusted, somebody well liked. This pit manager everybody liked, and the video that we saw where that floor supervisor kind of looked and said, "What was that person doing?" Well, when we were doing the investigation, of course, we pretty much knew it was just him, but we still wanted to see if anybody knew about it because it's a big thing. If you know somebody's doing something wrong, you got to report it. That's the right thing to do. And sure enough, one of his friends, that's also a floor supervisor, said, "Yeah, I knew about it. I didn't want him to get in trouble. Um, I didn't ask any questions. And we did some more investigation, and we don't know for sure if those was kickbacks or not, but he was also given money. Um, and so, uh, yeah, so somebody did know about it, and that we could prove anyways, another person knew about it and saw him and actually said, yeah, he was logged in under my name and he was punching in accounts. I saw it.
Oh, wow. Um, I see our Q&A is kind of loading up. I'm going to ask Steve Steiner. Steve, do we have any questions?
Yes, sir. Gentlemen, we have two questions real quick. The first question is, does the compliance team do daily audits to review patterns related to AML? And the second question was, can you please repeat what stood out in the ratings reports?
Let me take the second question, and then I'll let Bill answer the first one. The second question is in a couple of slides we're going to pull up some of the reports that Bill has given let us use, and you'll clearly see where it was indicated on the reports. There was a paperwork trail as far as the system report generating serious concerns.
Yeah, and then as far as the compliance team, our audit team does spot audits now. And I don't know if the compliance team, I know the compliance team does a lot of reviews for Know Your Customer. And as we go further in this presentation, you'll kind of see how that goes hand in hand, in my opinion, as far as knowing your top players and things like that.
Okay. Steve, any other questions?
Yes, really like to hear these questions coming in, and I'll repeat this one. Were these player club accounts under real or an active patron names, or were they under false names resulting in fake accounts? If they were false names, was there any documentation the suspect filled out or set up the fake account?
Good question. So actually, you hear about ghost accounts. These were actual real people. So they end up recruiting some friends and family members to come in and open up accounts and then give them their card and PIN number.
So I mean, it goes from 2-person, 3-person collusion to really a 11, 12-person collusion. Even if I know, like, and you'll talk about that the people who gave up their card and PIN numbers say they didn't know anything, they didn't know what was going on, but
Yeah, I don't know what sales pitch he did and said, "Hey,
yeah,
this will help me out if you come in and open up an account. You don't
right.
have to play. Just open an account and then give me the card and your PIN number." And I don't know if the sales pitch was like, "Oh, I'll destroy it later," or "Hey, don't worry about getting offered tickets for something. Just deny it. I'll take care of it. I just need more. To help my business out, I just need more accounts." I don't know what the sales pitch was, but if anybody told me to give up my driver's license, open up an account, and then give them my card and PIN number, I'd say you're crazy. I'm not
Right. Yeah. To each their own. It must be a tight knit family. So, all right. So moving
Gentlemen.
on. Yep. Go ahead.
If we have time, we have a few more questions. We have a lot of participants listening intently, and they have some follow-up questions.
Sure.
All right. So a couple of the short questions. How did the player get so many player cards issued to them? And what type of regulations occurred on handling player cards for this to occur in the pit? And there's a few more after you tackle those two.
So as I mentioned, the friends and family, they would come open up the cards and then give it to them after, outside the casino. So that's how they got the card. And then the regulation as far as the card play goes, obviously if he would have got caught with cards that didn't belong to him, we do have a policy in place that you basically forfeit that and your rights to any of that card. If you're, basically that's an identity theft, and that's how we see it. And they will have to forfeit those points, and then they would have to write the victims or the suspect would have to write a letter to our gaming commission to overturn any of that decision making, if that makes sense.
Bill, so that second question actually makes me think of a question as well. When you were interviewing him or when were watching on surveillance, he wasn't actually pulling out cards and then typing in the numbers, right? He was just doing it.
Yeah, he memorized the numbers, so he could just punch it in every account number and then open up that rating and then go back and adjust it later.
Okay. What is the procedure? And it's been a while since I've done table games, but back in the day, I remember like the player would have to hand the card to the floor supervisor, shift manager.
Card, they would have to swipe it, but the systems now say, "Hey, I forgot my card." There's probably a number of ways for them to open up that rating.
Okay.
For him, the system allows them just to punch in an account number and open that up.
All right.
All right, gentlemen, we have a few more. When it rains, it pours. I'm smiling when I say that. The next question is, or maybe it's a statement, reference the coupon fraud where the suspect was getting the money from the machine after using the cards. How are you proceeding with that? We have the same problem at a gaming operation in a big way. Over 81,000 documented so far. I omitted the name of the gaming operation.
So as I mentioned, the FBI was sitting on it. First, we go to the tribal police department for any criminal activity, and then if they need to branch out, they branch out. So the FBI took the case, and this was 2018. They concluded their investigation in probably about 6 months, but now it's going back and forth with the courts over the last couple of years. And I just got a notification of a new court date. Of course, with COVID, maybe that's another reason why it bumped up. But yeah, so hopefully for the next couple of months, the court will finally have kind of a disposition of this case done.
Great. And what kind of charges are involved in those proceedings right now?
So it's fraud. I don't know if the FBI put on identity theft because I don't know that sales pitch, but I would definitely think identity theft would be in there since he was using other people's cards and PIN numbers and how much they knew or didn't know. But yeah, it's internal theft and fraud is what the charges are on them.
Great, thank you. And a participant would like to know if there was any background or what the history was behind having cashable credits, and are cashable credits still allowed?
Yep. So we still have cashable credits. In the background is, we talked a little bit about it before, is that there was human interaction before. Like, so if you want something comped, or you want to, your match play or your coupons, or you want to cash them out into a slot ticket, you'd have to go in one line, get a voucher, go into an airline, give them that voucher to get your whatever it was, whether it's a free room, whether it's free dinner, or whatever it is. And then there was a limit on that. And I think it used to be like, $200, $300, $400. And then they would have to get a supervisor that would come over and approve that. So that way you could get your points that you've earned through your discount of play to go play. But I think I want to say 2016 is when a lot of these slot systems now gave you that integration that allowed you to just say, hey, you got points on your club card. Well, you don't have to go to the counter. You can just see my points. I want to download them and play them or cash them out. So I think that's when we started it. I think from this case and from other incidents that we've had is operations has to we give them the ability to kind of monitor their risk of how much they want to cash out and within 24 hours. And we've changed that, or at least operations have changed it. And we kind of also, oversee that of making sure that that risk of somebody not having the ability to cash out $100,000, in the 24-hour period. Setting limits to that is definitely a recommendation that between your commission and the casino management, and it has to come to an agreement.
Yeah, and cashable credits is it's one way of thought. Knowing where Nisqually is and used to live in Washington, there's a lot of competition on the I-5 corridor, and that Nisqually kind of sits in on that just off the I-5 corridor where there's a lot of gaming operations, and for a while there, the state of Washington wouldn't allow for free play. I believe that's recently changed in the last 4 or 5 years. So there were a lot of operations that were doing some sort of cashable discount wagering to keep customers coming. So some states. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I have a couple of questions, and I know that there's some of these questions you're going to get to later in the slide about what your casino has changed. But there's 2 questions here. One was with the friends and family, did the people open up new cards specifically for this fraud to occur, or did they already have cards? And then the second one has to do with surveillance. Is the TGR, or does the casino manage surveillance? And did surveillance perform daily audits of the patrons' cash buy-ins to match rating being entered?
Great question. So my understanding from his interview is that he convinced the friends and family to open up the card or the accounts and give them the card. So they weren't already pre-existing, and then he just took them over and reprint the card. He convinced them to do it. And then the second question, surveillance is under the Tribal Gaming Commission here at Nisqually. We do spot audits in conjunction with our TGA audit team. So that way the audit team can go over top players or random selected ratings, and then able to get with surveillance to review if that person is actually there playing. And those people are also the actual people redeeming these credits.
I think with that last question, we're going to hold up on the Q&As. We'll have some time at the end, but there's some other stuff that might answer some of these questions, especially when it comes to the reports and stuff like that. So what I'm at now is I've got the confession. I'm not going to insult everybody's intelligence. Hopefully you can see this. It's big enough, but just take a minute and read this and ask yourself, does anything in here really stand out? And if anything stands out, put it in the question and answer box. And I'd like to kind of see what you think. So I know there's one sentence in particular that really stood out to me when I read this. And hopefully it's the same one you're all thinking. You know, shy people. The one that stood out to me was I got my idea from Susie. Now in this confession, this is what we have. I got my idea from Susie, and I'll have Bill kind of talk about who Susie was or is. But one of the things that I like to mention on this is when you have somebody, and just as investigators, if you're investigators and you're used to talking to people, when you get a statement like this, don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. Just do a continuation statement where you're going to do a question and answer follow-up and get some specifics on questions that you might have as a result of his statement. It would help you because, like I said, the very first thing that I saw when I read this for the first time was I got my idea from Susie. Well, who's Susie? Bill, tell us who Susie is.
Yeah, so you've been in the gaming business long enough, you know that this isn't the first time you saw a false rating. So Susie is somebody that also did this. It was a little bit different circumstances. A friend of hers came up and said, "Hey, I'm not getting rated right," and so Susie went and started adding ratings to this player, a friend. And then it snowballed, and she was doing it when that player was even at the casino. And then meet up with that player later and get a cash kickback. And again, that was discovered accidentally. The person wasn't there, and somebody noticed that the rating was open, and the person was at work, and they shouldn't have got it because they were all friends, and so they notified us, and so we went in and did our investigation with Susie and the other person, and that was probably about 3 years prior to when John and his brother David did this incident. So, you know, you know, we keep this under wraps as much as we can, but within the table games team, they talk with each other and they know that, hey, so and so got busted for something. What did they get busted for? I don't know. I think they added points to somebody's club card. Um, I think it's no different than food and beverage giving away free shots to their friends. It goes along that lines, and then they pass it along. Hey, you can do it too. Just make sure it's only on cash transactions or whatever it might be. So it does. You do see these every 3 or 4 years kind of pop back up. These scams. They're nothing new. They just come in different flavors sometimes.
Right. Yeah. So I worked for a travel gaming operation, TGRA, for 8 years. And it seemed like you would consistently have the same scam reappear its ugly head, about every 6 months to a year. Just no accounting for, I guess, trying. A lot of people try, but then it always begs the question for the people, that get caught doing it, what did you guys do to assure that, not all your floor supervisors, did you have to go and run an investigation on every single person that had the ability to do what this gentleman did to see that they weren't doing it as well?
Yeah. Back when Susie did it, we reviewed the logs and information. It was a huge amount of transactions that our audit team has to go through. And then back when this incident happened again, we had to go back and hopefully you have somebody out there that's really good with databases, be able to look at the ratio of buy-ins to average bet to average play and average time to flag anything that stands out. Um, as we'll see later, a lot of systems will flag that out.
Right.
And same, as I mentioned with food and beverage now, the systems out there, they'll flag if there's so many no sales or something. Um, so a lot of times there's the ability to flag this automatically if you have crafty enough people to do it.
Did you say crafty?
Crafty.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I heard something else. I was like, what?
If they're crafty enough to able to create a script to monitor the data, I think it could self-populate these if the system doesn't already have it.
Right. And I don't know if I heard it, but so Susie was caught because of the human element, correct?
Yeah, for one, well, the good thing back then, as I mentioned earlier, there was a cap limit how much you could cash out before you needed a supervisor to come and approve it. So they kept it under $200 a day because anything over that, a marketing supervisor would have to approve it. And they would have to come and see the ID and make sure it's all legit. So they knew that. Obviously, your people know the controls better than anybody. They know how to work around it. So they kept it $200 and under, so it wouldn't, raise any concerns. But now with the automated system for cash outs, anyways, there isn't a human element because we don't want people to wait in line.
Well, I guess it was good that you had the human element in Susie's case because you guys caught it relatively quickly.
Yeah,
so.
it was fairly low amount. So.
All right, so moving along. So, ask yourself, could this have been discovered sooner? Possibly. What about the paperwork? Internal auditors and marketing people, you should be, asking yourself, what paperwork do you look at that would have helped you discover this? And what else would you want to look at? So, just some things to ponder. This first one, we took this from the report that we were actually given and just kind of put it into a cleaner spreadsheet as opposed to the system report. So, Bill, if you could kind of tell us what this report, what this is telling us here.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, in the first couple of years when they were doing the scam, they did it pretty low numbers, and then they really, increased it and really, got pretty arrogant, I guess, of their false ratings. And you can see from our top 11 players, all 11 of them only bought in for $25,000 or so and got back 38,000 or right around there. So these are all false report, false earnings. As you can see, your total buy-in, I bought in for $25,000 and I lost all of my money. My theoretical win for the casino is $322,000, and the points earned was 38 million. Convert that to cash, it was 38,000. So, anybody that prints out your top 20 players, which I'm sure your marketing does, or top 50, your marketing team does that so they know to send out, whether it's flyers, emails, and say, hey, we missed you last month, and we know you're a good player. They're always keeping an eye on this. And as I talked to Steve before, sometimes marketing, unless they come from table games, they might not know what they're looking at. But anybody that's working table games, if they saw this, they're like, no, either the system's messed up or we have a bigger problem on our hands.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I remember when I first started in the industry, getting some of the system reports. We were using the old Bally system, and we get those Bally reports, and they were really hard to understand what it was that you were looking at. And so, but for me, I spent a lot of time with the slot people, having them run me through these reports. But it took me a long time to really figure out, okay, what is a slot win report really telling me? And it's a good point. Things that I look at immediately when I see this report is the table games buy-in, and I'm assuming this is annual numbers.
This is year to date, I believe.
Yeah, so 25,600 for table games buy-in, and the actual one is 25,600. And if you look at all of them, they're all the same. They you would expect to see some differences between the buy-in and the actual win. And in this case, there wasn't. So if somebody really understood the report, this would have been something that should have, in my opinion, drawn their attention. How is this so? And then, a little investigation, and you get an opportunity to see some of the other reports that are really going to kind of speak volumes. And I think that's next. So I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen here so I can pull up the PDF documents. So just 1 second. Now, hopefully everybody can see this. So Bill, why don't you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so obviously the false ratings stick out. The very first one that's highlighted, time played 9 hours. Their chips in were $400. Their average bet was higher than what their chips in, which is 455 average bet. And of course, they lost on 400. And then the supervisor and the authority ID are the same people. So the person that opened this is also the person that approved it. So obviously that, I don't know anybody that can buy in for 400 and then average bet was 455 and they played for 9 hours. That sticks out. And it goes hand in hand of the ones that you see down below. And sometimes you see different supervisors and then you see different, but what's consistent is the very end column, the same person is approving all of these.
Yeah, we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and to me, if everybody's familiar with the old 542 standards for table games, now advisory standards, there's a requirement that if you have an electronic system, that you set up system parameters to make notifications when something arises. Usually, cancel fills, cancel credits. But this one was actually your system was actually giving error messages that were present, specifically pending reasons exceeds average bet limit. So the system is telling you that somebody bought in for $400, but their average bet is $455. The system was set up to catch that. One of the things that we talked about was it would have been nice if the system went one step further and made a notification other than just putting it on the report. But it's good to know that your system is set up to at least put red flags into it.
Yeah, it doesn't help putting red flags if the only person that's seeing is the person that's approving it.
True. True.
That's what's happening in this case. He's bringing up pending rating reports, and it shows this, and he's also making the alterations and approving them. So yeah, that's never a good thing in the system.
Yeah, it's tough when you find out after the fact that you have the segregation of duty issue.
Yep.
It's tough when somebody can perpetrate fraud and then also cover up the fraud. It makes it a tough hill to climb as far as catching the person. But and as we see here, supervisor and then authorizing IDs, one and the same. So look at your reports, make sure that you don't have a segregation of duty, that the person inputting is not also the same person authorizing it. With that being said, should also think about independent reviews. You should always want to have somewhere where somebody independent of the transaction is reviewing it.
And you got to watch those thresholds, because a lot of times the independent reviews will be a certain threshold.
Right.
We're only going to look at anything that somebody buys in for 1,000 or more,
right,
or even 500 or more. This would fly under the radar. So make sure it's completely random, whoever's reviewing it.
Yeah, and again, going back to my audit experience, when I was going out and doing ICAs within NIGC, we would look at the requirement of the somebody independent reviewing the transactions. And 9 times, I wouldn't say 9 times, a lot of times we would find out that they weren't really reviewing them, or they didn't really know exactly what they were reviewing them for. So it's important that whoever you put into that reviewing responsibility actually understands what it is that they're looking at, what they're looking for. And I agree with Bill. Thresholds are good, but maybe not only, kind of randomly spot check some and continue reviewing them.
Bill, I have a question really quick. Did the casino change the system after this incident, table touch to Bravo or vice versa?
Yeah, so I want to say it was probably maybe after 3 months of when we were doing all the investigation stuff, there was an update that wouldn't allow the person that opened up the rating to make any changes from the person that's approving it, or how did I say that, vice versa. So whoever's approving it can't go in there and alter any of the changes, whoever opened it. And you can't approve your own rating. So that was an update. I believe that's in patron management. Definitely see what version you guys have and test that out. But those were the major changes with an update that was shortly after our discovery. Now, of course, that you can always still sidestep that if you know the login and password of a floor supervisor. There's always ways around it, I guess, so to speak.
So the next report that's pretty telling is the report action journal. Bill, if you want to go ahead and kind of walk us through this one.
Yeah, so the very first one, you see that the location is the table highlighted. It says RBJ04, so that's blackjack 4. The cash buy-in is $200. Your average bet $95, and your time play 4 hours. That doesn't seem right. Obviously, I mean, if you can play blackjack, but on your average bet of $95 and only pay in $200 and play for 4 hours, and as you can see, this was a year prior to us discovering it, and you can see how they started off so small. But that's definitely a false rating. And if you go down below, these are all false ratings. Obviously, $200 cash in, average bet $100, and then you play for 8 hours on Spanish Street. No, that's not going to happen, right? But if you look on the last one down here, this is actually a slot machine, and you can see it says, SDS, which is the system there. $100 cash buy-in. Your average bet on the slot machine was $1.62. It paid you out $30 of your $100, and you played for 23 minutes. That's a very legit rating there. Obviously, a slot machine doesn't have any human interaction for ratings, so that's a legit rating versus the ones that you see above, which are all false ratings.
Enter your PIN.
Yeah, and the other thing to talk about with this report, so had there been subsequent buy-ins on RB J04 from this person during the 4 hours, it would have been aggregated under VEEF. So again, you're looking at a $200 buy-in, bet $95, and you're on the table for 4 hours. Not impossible. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's definitely something that you might want to say, this is out of the ordinary. It's not something we see every day. So let's take it a step further and look into this. Depending on what it was, let's see if we still have some surveillance footage, and we can go back and watch this. So. And then while I'm doing this, if we have any questions, Steve or Kieran.
Actually,
Yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
oh, thank you. I was going to say, Bill, they wanted to see, have you repeat handling the case over to the FBI, and what were the charges?
So the charges were internal theft, fraud, And what was the first part of your question?
Karen, what was the first part of that question?
Handling the case over to the FBI, and were the people charged? Goodness,
Yeah, so
no.
we handed the case over to the FBI for prosecution. One of the challenges I think probably a lot of people see in the travel gaming world is finding prosecutors that know what they're doing as far as casino crime. So it's definitely a big educational gap there of, talking this through the FBI agent and explaining what they're looking at, and having the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, go after these individuals. And obviously these cases can go on for a couple of years, and it's, we're 2.5 years into it, and like I said in the beginning, I'm hopeful that it'll finally close out here soon. And I know that we have fraud insurance that covered most of this, but we still like to see some restitution. As always, go back to the tribe, and hopefully at some point we'll see that from these individuals.
And could you repeat, did they get charged with identity theft and fraud charges?
Well, they're charged with, from my understanding, from what I read from the court documents, it's internal theft and fraud. I would think that there's to be a strong case made for identity theft, since they were using other players' accounts. Supposedly, they didn't know that they were doing this. They thought they were just helping them out by opening up the account. So by misleading them and using their name and for this action, I would think that would be identity fraud, but identity theft. But as far as I know, the FBI hasn't charged them in that.
And Bill, can you tell us how many people were actually charged with
So
this?
3 people. The pit manager, his brother that he started out helping, and then they recruited another friend later on, and his other friend had, I think, 2 of the accounts, 2 or 3 of the accounts. So those 3 people were charged. So during the
But
FBI investigation, they didn't,
So-
they must have said, those other people didn't know or something.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask. I'm assuming they interviewed and questioned all the people that came in and opened up cards and handed them off, and nothing to substantiate charges.
Yeah, we keep our fingers crossed when we gift wrap the case and hand it over to law enforcement that they turn over every stone. But they have a priority list on sometimes, and they can only go so far with what they have. So.
What prior to this incident, you said the tribal police are the ones that said let's bring in the FBI. Do your tribal police and your TGA have a relationship with your federal prosecutors and FBI? Did you before the event, or do you now?
We do now. With the FBI, they specifically have an agent that's kind of assigned to the tribe that we can bring cases through. Normally, the minor ones, we bring the state gaming commission on board, and a lot of times they will have the ability to take on the case, or the county. Prior to, I want to say 2004, a little history, the tribal police were not dual commissioned, so in any of these cases would be handed over to the county sheriff's department. But since then, now they are dual commission, that they can take on up to a certain amount on a case, and then we pass it on, whether it's to the state or to the county prosecutor.
So I guess the point that I'd like to make is if you don't have a relationship with your local or federal law enforcement prosecutors, it would be a good thing to establish that kind of relationship. A lot of people or a lot of jurisdictions are reluctant to prosecute casino crimes, and I agree with Bill. I think it's really from a lack of education of instead of them seeing this victim as being this, this big enterprise, multi-million that's in gambling, and they just don't really understand the how it works. So.
Hi, Bill. I know that we have just a few minutes left, but folks want to know, what was the total amount of the theft and how did you prove it? And did the IRS get involved for unreported income? Of course, people want to know, what have you implemented, like know your customer, internal controls, things like that.
Well, the last part of that question is really going to probably be covered in this part right here, kind of the lessons learned and what they've done to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And I don't want to steal Bill's thunder, but what was the total amount, Bill? 800 and some thousand?
It was actually just shy of 800,000. But I think in that one clip that we saw earlier, that 400. So in 1 year, it was around 600,000. And then we look back on the 2 other year and a half after that, it was an error, 180,000 or something like that, because they kept it small.
Yeah.
So it was 700 and something, I think, was the total amount. But we had to link up all those false ratings to those accounts and then pull up those accounts on 2 different systems to look at their redemptions. How much did they actually redeem? And that's where we got the amount from. We didn't go off of any play they might have done. So we really only look at redemptions. And that's how we came up with that number.
So in actuality, it could be a lot higher.
It could be, yes.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you guys had a dishonest employee insurance and were able to recoup at least some through the insurance company. And then, so regardless of what happens to them through the criminal courts, the insurance company is definitely going to be going after them for their money back. So let's kind of move forward a little bit. Let's talk about what lessons you learned from this and what your operations and TGA have done to kind of ensure that this doesn't happen again.
So as we mentioned before, we do spot audits from our own audit team that works with surveillance. And also mentioned the casino had changed the the timeout settings for logins. The report system now doesn't allow the person approving those pending reports to alter anything in there. And so I think operations also has their own internal review, but as regulatory, you got to do your own. So we do our own spot audits and work with actual video surveillance to ensure that the people that are being rated are actually there. So those are some of the major controls that we put in place. Of course, like I said, there's always workarounds. If a pit manager gets a hold of a floor supervisor's login and password and knows some accounts, they can manipulate it. I think somebody had mentioned prior to this about ghost accounts, anybody in marketing creating ghost accounts. So if they get greedy and you print out that top 50 list, you should know your operations should know those top 50. And even regulatory wise, we look at that top 50 because a lot of marketing and promotions give out free items to those top 50. And so we always double check that. And even in this case, one of those names came up in our radar, but we didn't catch it because they declined Seahawk tickets. So that's usually very rare that somebody, turns down a sweet ticket to an NFL game. So it does happen, but, it was a new name. It didn't come up and we didn't dig further that, that maybe we probably should have look at those that also not just accept the Seahawks tickets or gifts or whatnot or free play of X amount. Review those that turn those things down too. So you never know if it's an actual person or a ghost account.
One of the things that we talked about recently is, promotions and in the current COVID environment. You brought up a couple of really good points, and I was hoping maybe you'd share that with the audience.
So with COVID, there's even less interaction with people. So again, that's how this could go on for a long period of time. But also, I'm hopeful that electronic table games comes in play at some point. So that way we don't rely on humans interaction with putting in ratings, because it can be you're always going to find issues there or potential issues there. And if people have to sit on a table and scan their ticket in and get their play rated electronically, as you saw in the slots ratings, the room for error is a lot, the risk is a lot lower. So I'm hoping, and we see that with COVID now, a lot hand-to-hand interaction is getting lowered, and recently a compact negotiation up here in Washington State has allowed extension of credit, mobile funds transfer, and things like that. So, which has its own issues and concerns. But as far as rating goes, if we can have more electronic table games, I believe it will lower the risk for these kind of rating scams.
And let me just do a quick shameless plug for our next upcoming training, which is on digital wallets, mobile gaming, downloads of currency, and our division of technology will be doing that on the 4th. So a shameless plug. One of the things that we talked about was, with promotions is, it must be present to win. And in this COVID environment, some operations, and yours included, are now doing it to where you don't have to be present to win because of social distancing and limiting the numbers. What kind of risk does that pose?
Yeah, so you got to evaluate that and add controls in. For us, we have, in internal control training, they always tell you to do it in threes. So any kind of winner drawing you have to do in threes. Whoever's picking the name, a supervisor has to verify it, and surveillance has to verify it. So we put those controls in place for giving out, whether it's a call or whatever, a trip or something. And you don't have to be present to win, because before it was easy to see if whoever was drawing the name and their significant other is the winner, everybody can see that, right? But when they don't have to be present to win, it's harder to put two to two together. So always my recommendation is to have the threes there, which is whoever's doing the action, a supervisor or manager present, and then the third is surveillance, which actually has the ability to zoom in on the name and make sure that the name that's being drawn is something that they report, so that our audit team can follow up to make sure that there was nothing nothing going on that shouldn't be.
Great. All right, so just a quick summary. So we've talked about this case. It was a fraudulent player points. This went on for over 2.5 years, and as Bill said, just under $800,000 that was taken from them. Interesting thing is, we probably can all relate to this that have done some kind of investigation. Is it always seems to be a trusted employee, somebody that everybody likes. And sometimes it's tough to catch those because people like them and don't want to rat them out and talk about them. We talked about the reports. Were they being reviewed? Were they being reviewed? Was there a lack of review? And really, ultimately, know your customers. When the top 11 are in your top 50 players and nobody knows them, know who your players are. And still tougher for really, really big operations. It's probably a little easier for smaller operations, but there's ways to make sure that those are in place. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I forgot when we were talking about lessons learned, is your tip line. You used to have a tip line, and then kind of talk about that. It's one of the things you guys brought back as a result of this.
Yeah, so we had a tip line back when we talked about the Susie incident at some point, but then we kind of changed offices a couple of times, and somehow it got lost in the shuffle. So we have a tip line now, and it was in conjunction with operations. They actually helped put it together so that they have a number internally, so you could pick up a phone within the operation inside the casino and dial it and go straight to a tip number, which goes to our investigations manager that checks on it, so they can come and say, hey, I saw something that was funny. We also have an email that they can email out. So because majority of these cases are found by accident or tip. Every once in a while, it's found on actually doing our job and reviewing these things, but majority of it is accidental or tip.
Since instituting your tip line, have you guys discovered anything else that someone's made you aware of?
Yes, and even on social media, you'll find things sometimes about your casino more than, like, oh, we better look into that. Whether it's somebody claiming they saw something on the roulette table, or two players or two employees in the garage exchanging money, whatever it might be. We take all that serious. And so, we have investigated a couple of incidents from our tip line. And it's not just for tip line, it's also for any criminal activity you see. So if somebody does see something in your parking garage or parking lot, they can also call that number and leave a tip.
Great. So that's the pretty much the case study. I know we kind of had a rush towards the end. I want to try to keep it under an hour. I think we're just a little over an hour. I'll open it up and ask Steve or Kieran if we have any more questions before we end this.
I just want to let you know we've dispatched all the questions thanks to your due diligence and the participation from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a little strange, or I think we're getting more and more used to these virtual trainings. If you have any requests, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're still open for business. We're still doing training as much as you want and as much as you ask for. Please do your survey at the end. And then my last call is if you have a case that you would like to share with us, we would love to hear it. I think hopefully this case study was a something you took something out of, took something away, and this is a great opportunity to really keep everybody up to speed on what's going on and lessons learned and how to prevent this kind of stuff from happening to somebody else. And I want to thank Bill and the Nisqually Gaming Commission for being willing to share this. It is what it is, and it's some maybe tough to hear and tough to keep going over this and reliving it, but there's so much value to not just them, but to the people that attend these trainings that we'd like to keep this going. And so if you have something, email me at traininginfo at nigc.gov. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, thank you so much. And again, thank you, Bill. Appreciate you.
Good being here. Hopefully that information can help, and others will join in and share cases, and we can all learn together.
Agree. All right. Well, thank you. And I hope to see you all on February 4th for Digital Wallets. Have a good day.